Chawere, welcome to Born Extinct, my journey to acknowledgement of my ancestors and my authentic spiritual self. My name is Paypqqqal, and I was born extinct. Zuar, or Swar, as my elders used to call it, is set between the Swartberge, the highest peak in the Cape at 2,325 meters, a UNESCO heritage site, and the Rooiberge, where it meets the Outeniqua Mountains. People living in kraals behind the Outeniqua Mountains are called the Agterberge mense. My clan, the Herendins, are Agterberge mense. My elders still refer to Zuar by its post-colonial name, Doringkraal. Zuar and Amalistein's history is intertwined. Hoofstraat connects Zuar and Amalstein by winding itself along the now dried-up river. Zuar has several parts, including Breintjieshoogte, Doringkraal, Karoolande, Gamkasand, and Braklaagte. Zuar is 21 kilometers from Ladysmith and 81 kilometers from Paypqqqal, which is now called Oudtshoorn. The mission station was formally established when the settler brothers J.I. and J.C. Nell handed it over to the Cape government in 1817. It was only in January 1885 that our land was formally transferred to the Christians. The streams flowing out of the Seweveerspoort, fed by the annual snow-capped mountains of the Swartberge, used to feed the streams in Zuar and Amalstein. Currently, there's very little water flowing into our villages, making it difficult for indigenous Khoi to grow their own food, increasing their dependence on the settler. Water is now often delivered by Gift of the Givers and other NGOs. Zuar now has a population of between 4,000 and 5,000 people, most of whom rely on social services for their survival. This is the village where my mother, her mother, and my ancestors were born and brought up. This year is a letter to my mother, Christina Elizabeth, also known as Christine, Stini, and Titi, and Mammie. Dear Mammie, I am so grateful that you used to send us home to Zuar. We learned to call this place home. Thank you. Home was a place of infinite love, infinite time, space, spirituality, nurturing, learning, and the only place where I have ever felt that I am one with the nature and creator. I love your childhood home, Mammie, next to Papa Buta's house, Green Villa. This house is like a beacon inside Zuar. I guess you love this house too, since you grew up there with your mother, Oma Hester, who I never got to know. There used to be cows in the kraal at the back. Did I tell you how wonderful your ancestral home looks now? My cousin Clement has restored it beautiful. That long stoep with a buitekamer can tell centuries of good and bad stories. When I'm in Zuar and I gravitate towards the house, I feel hundreds of years of history and ancestors tugging and pulling me towards it. I can't remember ever complaining about going home. All I remember was longing and looking forward to getting there. I remember being very sad and anxious every time we left home and dreading the wind that always came, and it seemed like it fetched us outside the Toys Kloof Pass and pushed us violently towards our home in Cape Town. I can't remember how many times you told us when we were growing up in District 6 what a happy childhood you had. You also said that it was very hard work, but you emphasized happy. I, of course, understand the circumstances that led us to being brought up in such a comparatively chaotic environment like District 6, away from peace, serenity, acceptance, and people who look just like us. Does it make you sad knowing how much we missed growing up in the city? Or did it please you that we had access to the modern world? It must have been such a sacrifice for you knowing that we could never really fully learn our beautiful culture. Mammie, at home, the relationship between children and adults were completely reciprocal, with such gentle and natural synergy between all of us. It was a beautiful place. At home, there was an understanding that the elders were there to teach us to be the next generation of custodians and teachers. We accepted that. We also accepted that what we were being taught, we would eventually teach our descendants. Nothing that we did at home was ever for the moment, but in preparation for those who were still to be born many generations into the future. We were never made aware of how precarious our situation was. Home was our happy place. We all just lived happily and went about our business, which was mostly physical work. There was and still is so much laughter and teasing in Zouar. I love going home. As an adult, I have never warned anybody of my arrival. I know it's selfish, but I really love the joy that I see in my blood relatives when they see me. We were taught important life skills that is not applicable in the city. I am delighted to know those skills. My friends laugh when I tell them that I really hate camping because it feels like I'm ridiculing rural life. My least favorite job at home was taking out the peapots, fetching water for breakfast at the crack of dawn while dodging the mermaid whose hair was so long that she could throw it right into the road and catch you and pull you in, was part of the adventure of fetching water. Fetching kindling for fire, feeding the pigs before washing. Breakfast was a thick, warm slice of bread with fresh, warm cow's milk. You told us that people at home were very poor. But what we experienced, or certainly what I experienced, that everyone behaved and lived like royalty, which made me feel like royalty. It is there that I learned that contentment is wealth, and that no amount of money can achieve contentment. During the day, just like you did as a child, everyone did what needed to be done. Nana Net, Granny, Oma Hester, Titi, and all the elders would know exactly whose child would be turning 21, which one needed to get baptized, how much cake needed to be baked, whose turn it was to slaughter, who was harvesting what fruit and what vegetables. Before we all took off for the day, we would be instructed to exactly where wood should be fetched from, where the water should be fetched from the river or from the well, where fruit should be picked, which field needed watering, where goats would graze, where the cows would graze, whose turn it is to relieve the shepherds at Gamkasand. Transgressions would be treated as disrespect to the land and would be punished. The mornings were great. That was when we would be given the weather report. There was always so much talk about the weather, and especially the imminent rain. The rain never really came, but we learned how to harvest water from dew and snow for the use around the house. I love that. It reminded me that I am nature, no more, no less. The weather report, although I loved it, confused me, but it was clearly very important to the adults. The only thing I understood about the weather at home is that there would be summer and then there would be winter. But the lyrical and poetic way in which it was presented and described kept me fascinated throughout my childhood. To me, it seemed like there were thousands of ways to describe. There will be no rain today, tomorrow, next week, next month, or even the year after. All I knew was that at home, summer was very hot and winter was very cold with snow. We called the snow kapok. I guess because it looks like cotton wool balls. When we woke up in the morning and the landscape was transformed into a winter wonderland, it was magnificent. The conversations about the imminent rain was ongoing, even though at one point it had not rained for 9 years. Every little isolated cloud had so much meaning and description. Cape Town, where the weather had many moods, mostly bad moods, like Wyfie-wind, Cape Doctor, Bergwind, gale force wind, 4 days rain and 8 days rain, is where we spent most of our time. At home, in the Karoo, we were always waiting for rain. We could smell the rain as it came from the Swartberge, where the mist came over the sea from the Outeniqua, but never really quite reached Zuar. I don't need you to tell me anymore to take an umbrella, Mammie. I'm your rain child. I found in your youngest granddaughter, my daughter Ruby, the one I call Rubain, a child who loves the rain as much as I do. She waits all winter for rain, and when it finally arrives, she would rush outside and stay there until she's completely drenched. But just as she is coy, lightning frightens me. Join me immediately hereafter for part 2 of my letter to my mummy. My name is Paypqqqal, and I was born extinct.